even though Clay Helton, okay, let's face it, may not have the best reputation as a Power 5 head coach, his first year at Georgia Southern excelled expectations. And if you want to look for a sleeper team in the Sun Belt Conference in 2023, I think I've found it right here. The Georgia Southern Eagles, even though they're replacing a quarterback, some other key contributors, I think have every piece necessary to not only be a sleeper team, maybe spoil someone's season in the Sun Belt, but I think they legitimately have enough options to be able to compete for a Sun Belt Conference title. Are the Georgia Southern Eagles ready to do what I just said and go win the Sun Belt and be a sleeper team? Or is this team, maybe last year was a flash in the pan and they take a step back under Clay Helton? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome to my channel. I'm previewing and predicting all 133 FBS level college football teams this summer. Guys, it means I'm doing your favorite team, so hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. But there are more ways than that you can show support for the channel. You're doing one right now by watching the video. You can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, anything else you're willing and able to do to help me support my channel. Support on the channel has been great this summer. I'd continue to push you guys to do it. Whatever you can do, it means a lot to me. Really, really does. All right, let's go ahead and dive on in to the Georgia Southern Eagles out of the Sun Belt Conference in 2023. It's Clay Helton's group. But hey, how do we do things around here? Well, we go through a roster overview, look at who the team lost, who's coming back, and who's coming in through the transfer portal and recruiting class, as well as taking a look at the Eagle football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. So let's start talking about the Georgia Southern Eagles here in 2023. Again, quarterback room. You are going to be losing your starting quarterback from last year, a former transfer, I believe, from the University of Buffalo over here in Kyle Van Treese. He had 4,253 yards on almost 61.5% completion percentage, 27 touchdowns. The problem with him came last year was he had 16 interceptions that may have led the way in FBS. I do not have that stat up, but it definitely was towards the top of the list, if not at the top of the list. However, minus the interception number, Kyle Van Treese was a really good option at quarterback for this Georgia Southern team. He brought experience, brought a really, really good arm, brought a really, really good talent. Kyle Van Treese will be missed. However, this passing attack is not going to slow down any at all. Again, quarterback situation would have been trouble if they did not bring in some transfers, as Davis Brin is coming over from Tulsa. That's a very experienced arm. It's a very big arm as well. And Davis Brin should be able to keep this passing attack that was so good a year ago going. I think he's going to be a really good player for this Georgia Southern team, as well as J.C. French is transferred in as well. But he will definitely be the backup behind Davis Brin, who will definitely take the more snaps under center than anyone on this team. All right, when you go ahead and take a look at the running back position, again, yes, some key contributors do leave. Gerald Green had 483 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. He is going to be gone, as well as A.J. Brown. However, Jalen White is coming back. That was your leading rusher last year, 914 yards and 10 touchdowns for him. And then O.J. Arnold comes back as well, was the team's third leading rusher, 45 carries. Will get a boost in carries with Gerald Green being gone off this team. So you're set at running back there as well. You have your guy in Jalen White. In the wide receiver room, okay, well, yes, you do take some losses here. Your third leading receiver in Jeremy Singleton is gone at 714 yards and 2 touchdowns on 66 catches. And then Amare Jones, 483 yards, 6 touchdowns. That 6 touchdown mark was second on the team. You're going to be losing him. But your 2 leading receivers do come back. That's Caleb Hood and Derwin Burgess. 925 yards and 3 touchdowns for Hood, and for Burgess, 717 yards and 7 touchdowns on 58 catches. Hood, by the way, 87 catches. Those are 2 really good options. Both of them, I think, have the potential to be 1,000-yard receivers for Davis Brin this year. And then Marcus Sanders comes back as well to give some depth to this wide receiver room. Had 20 catches last year, only 171 yards, but should be really good. And then you get Anthony Quealy, who is a transfer coming in to this program that should give a boost to this wide receiver room. And then in the tight end room, well, you return pretty much everyone under the moon and sun. Bo Johnson, J.J. McAfee, and Evan Lester are going to be coming back. But no doubt in anyone's mind for this Georgia Southern team, your starting tight end is going to be a former transfer from the SEC from the Kentucky Wildcats. It's Keaton Upshaw. Watch out for him this year. He can be really, really good for this Georgia Southern team. And then on the offensive line, Khalil Crowder, Chandler Strong, Brian Miller come back, and then Bryson Broadway is a transfer coming in, should start on that offensive line. That is what is according to ourlads.com. I think this offense is going to be really, really good this season. definitely one of the best that we're going to see in the Sun Belt this year. But defense, what can we expect out of the defense this year? Well, it does lose a lot of key contributors in the front and back four. We're going to go ahead and take a look at those right now. Starting out with the defensive line, well, you definitely do lose some key guys here. Justin Ellis led the team in sacks last year, 4.5 sacks. 48 tackles. Again, this was not a team that generated a ton of sacks. Yeah, they got pressure, but Justin Ellis was their main sack contributor. He is going to be gone. Dylan Springer, LJ McLeod, and Quinn Williams are all guys that are going to be leaving this defensive line as well. So who comes back? Latrell Bullard, Christian Varner, Isaiah Walker, and Deshaun Davis are going to be some key contributors on the defensive line for the Eagles this year. When you take a look at the linebacking unit, well, couldn't really find any losses here. You got a lot of guys coming back. Two top three tacklers from last year, Marquez Watson-Trent, who reached triple digits, had 113, had a sack on there as well. And then Kadri Jackson comes back as well, 84 tackles, a sack, an interception, which he returned for a touchdown. Jalen Jackson going to be coming back in that linebacking unit as well. He had a sack and a half. Contributed to the team last season. And then you get some transfers coming in. Will give some depth to this linebacker room, but should still be really good options. Devon Gilmore is a transfer coming in, and then Terrion Lee is another SEC transfer coming over from Texas A&M. All right, let's take a look at the defensive back room. Man, do you lose a lot of talent here. Najee Thompson, Derek Canteen, Anthony Wilson, Tyler Bride, Wyland Free, and Justin Birdsong. All of those guys in the secondary are going to be gone. Canteen and Thompson led the team with 11 passes defended. Bride was not far behind with 9. He also led the team with 2 interceptions last season. And then mix in some of those other guys as well. Wilson was a triple-digit tackler last season. So a lot of key contributors will leave this defensive backfield. But Mark Stampley does come back, was a pretty solid option for them. And then again, a lot of transfers. TJ Smith, Cam Williams, and Demel Hickman are coming into this program. Again, if the defense can find some pieces that fit, we know the offense is going to be good. This has all the pieces for a breakout team this year. Your head coach is Clay Helton, offensive coordinator Brian Ellis, and your defensive coordinator is Brandon Bailey. As we take a look at the Eagles football schedule for 2023, not without a lot of landmines. Hey, any games at home will be underlined. Any games on the road will be in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Golden Eagles, the Eagles are going to be able to win easily. Any game in yellow is a game that I think could be a 50-50 back and forth type game, but a game I still see Georgia Southern being able to win, and red is a loss. You start out your year with a pretty easy one here, an FCS opponent against the Citadel that I think you're going to be able to win. Quick water break. Make sure all of you stay hydrated out there. But the Citadel should be an easy win for Georgia Southern there in week 1. And then in week 2, you get a really interesting game here, a Sun Belt American Athletic clash. You got to face the UAB Blazers. It's their first season in the American Athletic, and they got a new head coach coming in there, along with replacing a lot of key pieces. I do think UAB has a lot of solid talent there, but I'm just not buying the head coaching hire of Trent Dilfer quite yet. I definitely think UAB is going to be a very solid, very competitive team this year. I definitely think they can be a fringe bowl game team, but until I see Trent Dilfer prove that he can succeed at the FBS college level, he has a lot of inexperience on that staff. I'm just not fully 100% sold on UAB yet, and I think this passing attack of Georgia Southern is going to really lay into this Blazer secondary. I think Georgia Southern wins that game there in week 2. A pretty close competitive contest, but the Eagles come out on top of the Blazers. However, I do not think you're going to beat Wisconsin. I think that's going to be the bona fide favorite out of the Big Ten West this year. Tanner Mordecai is transferring in. It's going to be a very different offense than folks are used to seeing in Madison, but the same old defense. You got Luke Fickell coming in as your head coach. They're going to be a really good team here in 2023. Make no mistake about it. On the road at Ball State could be another interesting one as well. That's a MAC opponent that may very well sit maybe towards the bottom, but definitely could have potential to sit middle of the road there. Could be an interesting one. Could be a game that gives the Eagles some trouble. But again, I think that passing attack a little too much for this Cardinal secondary. And I think Georgia Southern really going to be able to move the ball on the ground this year as well. So Ball State there. I think we'll suffer a loss to the Georgia Southern Eagles. So 3-1 through non-conference play. You enter conference play, with a really tough task here. A really first couple of games, you got to stay at home here, but Coastal Carolina comes to town. They got one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt Conference, if not the best quarterback. I am going to say the best quarterback in the Sun Belt Conference. Grayson McCall is there. He's got one of the best skill position groupings in the Sun Belt. And even though this team is under new management, this is going to be the same old Coastal Carolina that's going to be competing for a Sun Belt championship. This is a really hard draw for Georgia Southern out of the gate in Sun Belt Conference, especially when you're feeling good coming out of non-conference play. But I do see you suffering a loss there to the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. And even though you do get a bye week in between these two games, I still think you suffer a loss against James Madison here as well. The Dukes return a lot of production on defense, especially on that defensive front, which can give pressure to Davis Brin, and in that secondary as well, that I think is going to be able to not necessarily fully lock down this Georgia Southern passing attack. I think that's going to be a really hard thing to do for anyone this season, but I do think James Madison is going to do effectively enough, let their offense score. They are replacing some pieces, but they have a lot of nice talent, and JMU will continue their just a surprising transition from the FCS level. I believe Georgia Southern will lose that game there. So 3-3. Nate, you did say this was a sleeper team, right? Well, take a look at the back half of the schedule. I think it is pretty favorable. I think you're going to beat the Warhawks, University of Louisiana Monroe. Not a team that I really like this year. Not a team that I think, well, maybe can compete slightly in the Sun Belt Conference among some of the bottom tier teams. But I do think ULM is going to be a step behind Georgia Southern in pretty much every aspect. The Eagles will be able to win that game. Then you get a Thursday game here in Week 9 against Georgia State. Now, the Panthers are going to be a very interesting team this season. I think Sean Elliott's group is going to be a really, really solid group this year. You are returning a quarterback, and even though a lot of key contributors leave on both sides of the ball, this is the team that loaded up on Power 5 transfers, and I think are still going to have a pretty solid season here in 2023. However, that being said, this Georgia Southern passing attack, again, is going to be really hard to stop for almost anyone, and I think simply this is just too dynamic of an offense for Georgia State to try to outscore. I think they have some solid pieces defensively, but I don't think they're going to be able to slow down the Eagles' offense enough to be able to win that game. So I got Georgia Southern pulling away with the victory there. This Texas State game could prove to be fairly interesting as well. Maybe a close competitive game. Texas State is a team that I could see surprising in the Sun Belt. Now, will they? In my opinion, probably not. But I do think that Georgia Southern on the road will be too much for the Bobcats, a team that I see sitting towards the bottom of the Sun Belt Conference this year. And then you go on the road to play Marshall. This is a very, very interesting game right here because Marshall, I think, has all the defensive pieces they need and more to be able to compete with this Georgia Southern passing attack that I think will be second to none in the Sun Belt Conference, as you've probably heard me say a lot throughout this video. But if Marshall's offense can get rolling, there are a lot of good skill possession players there. Rasheen Ali is coming back. The quarterback, whether it's Fancher, who was their leading passer last year, took over for Henry Columby, or a transfer they have coming in, whoever it may be, will be settled in by this point, has a really good group of skill position players. And I think with defensive prowess too, Marshall is going to be able to win that game. So I got the Eagles losing on the road to the Marshall Thundering Herd. I think defense is going to be able to slow them down. Offensively, I think they'll be settled in by this point. They'll do enough to be able to win this game. You will be able to beat Old Dominion, a team that I could see being a little competitive this year, but that's a team that lost a lot to the transfer portal, so no dice against an offense as talented as the Georgia Southern Eagles. And then on the road against App State. What a fun game this was last year, huh? I believe 99 points, over 1,000 yards. This was an insane game last year. It probably will be again this season. But I think Georgia Southern, on the offensive end, App State is replacing a lot in that linebacking unit, and I think they lost just way too much to be able to stop this Georgia Southern passing attack. Even though it is the last game of the season, I still see Georgia Southern walking away with the win on the road, for an 8-4 season. Again, maybe a little bit of a surprise to some this year, but this is the team that I could see doing even better than that. This is the team that if everything goes right and if the defense can improve from last season, this is the team that I see just absolutely exploding in 2023. You want a sleeper in the Sun Belt? Here's your sleeper in the Sun Belt. But that's going to do it for my thoughts on the Eagles. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. And as always, remember to play hard, to tailgate harder. See you guys in the next video.